Hello and a very warm welcome to the Breakfast News on Rajya Sabha television with me, Frank Pereira. Here's a look at the top stories that we're tracking this hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Barack Obama shared their thoughts in a joint Mann Ki Baat program aired hours after Obama leaves India after a historic 3-day visit. Pakistan slams US overtures to India during the 3-day visit. Terms operationalization of the civilian nuclear deal a threat to South Asia, peeved at Obama's support for India at the UNSC. Two Hizbul Mujahideen terrorists gunned down in Tral area of Jammu and Kashmir. A gallantry medal awardee is among 2 Indian security men killed. And the quarterfinals begin at the Australian Open. India's Sania Mirza and Leander Paes played their mixed doubles matches today. Top focus on the bulletin this morning. US President Barack Obama wound up his 3-day India visit yesterday, seen as a landmark in Indo-US bilateral and strategic ties. Even after he left yesterday afternoon, a special 35-minute edition of Mann Ki Baat featuring Obama with Prime Minister Modi that had been recorded during the visit was aired last night. Here's more.
I think part of what motivates both you and I is the belief that there are millions of children out there who have the same potential, but may not have the same education, may not be getting exposed to opportunities in the same way. And so part of our job, part of government's job, is that young people who have talent and who have drive and are willing to work for it are able to succeed.
कुछ भी बनने के सपने कभी मत देखो। अगर सपने देखने हैं तो कुछ करने के देखो। जब कुछ करते हैं तो संतोष भी मिलता है और नया करने की प्रेरणा भी मिलती है। सिर्फ बनने के सपने देखते हैं और नहीं बन पाते हैं तो सिवाय निराशा कुछ हाथ नहीं लगता है। और इसलिए मैंने जीवन में कभी कुछ भी बनने का सपना देखा नहीं था। आज भी कुछ बनने के सपने दिमाग में है ही नहीं, लेकिन कुछ करने के जरूर हैं और भारत माता की सेवा करना, 125 करोड़ देशवासियों की सेवा करना, इससे बड़ा सपना क्या हो सकता है। एक जमाने में खास करके कम्युनिस्ट विचारधारा से प्रेरित लोग थे, वे दुनिया में एक आह्वान करते थे और वो कहते थे वर्कर्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड यूनाइट, दुनिया के मजदूर एक हो जाओ। मैं समझता हूं आज की जो युवा की शक्ति है, आज की युवा की जो पहुंच है, इसको देखते हुए मैं यही कहूंगा कि यूथ यूनाइट द वर्ल्ड, युवकों दुनिया को एक करो।
I say sometimes that the only problems that come to my desk are the ones that nobody else solves. If they were easy questions, then somebody else would have solved them before they reached me. So there are days when it's tough and frustrating, and that's true in foreign affairs, that's true in domestic affairs. But I tell you what inspires me, and I don't know, Mr. Prime Minister, if you share this view. Almost every day I meet somebody who tells me, you made a difference in my life. Sometimes they're thanking you for things that you did 4 or 5 years ago. Sometimes they're thanking you for things you don't even remember or you're not thinking about that day. But it's a reminder of what you said earlier, which is if you focus on getting things done as opposed to just occupying an office or maintaining power, then the satisfaction that you get is unmatched.
Well, during the visit, US President Barack Obama called for a greater role for India in the Asia-Pacific region. Against the backdrop of China exerting its influence in the South China Sea, Obama said freedom of navigation must be upheld. However, China refuted Obama's remarks on the dispute. Beijing's reaction comes a day after criticizing Obama's support for India at the Nuclear Suppliers Group.
India made its stand clear on the South China Sea row last year when it called for free navigation on the disputed waters. Southeast Asian nations like Vietnam have sought India's help on maritime safety and security in the region. On Tuesday, US President Barack Obama called for India's greater role in the region, backing Delhi's views.
The United States welcomes a greater role for India in the Asia-Pacific, where the freedom of navigation must be upheld and disputes must be resolved peacefully.
China has refuted the remarks. Its foreign ministry said the issue should be resolved through talks by parties directly concerned. Obama's remarks came a day after China reacted strongly to US support for India for a place in the nuclear suppliers group. On Monday, China called Pakistan its irreplaceable ally in the region. According to experts, China views the US-India bonhomie as an attempt to balance Beijing's dominance in the region.
Chinese are obviously reacting to what they fear is the American attempt to bring India into its into the ambit of its alliances and the pivot to Asia framework. So they naturally are having concerns that India will also be joining the United States.
China had earlier warned India against meddling in its dispute with Vietnam over islands in the South China Sea. It also opposed Vietnam's move to invite India to carry out oil exploration in the area. Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan and Vietnam contest the Chinese claims on the resource-rich region. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, joining me for a chat this morning on this very subject is the editor of Hard News, Sanjay Kapoor. Sanjay, good morning and thanks for joining me in the program. Well, let's talk about China. China clearly seems to be miffed with what's happened over the last 3 days. Obama's visit has gone extremely well as far as India and the US are concerned, and that's not going down too well with the Chinese, is it?
The Chinese know the implication of a close relationship with the United States of America. Many years ago in the 1969-70, they got closer to United States of America as a counterpoint to Soviet Union, and you know what happened subsequently. China has become a superpower because of their close proximity. So they realize that in the long term, if India and US come together, if there is greater alignment between US interests and the Chinese US interests and the Indian interests, the country that might get diminished would be China. So they know what kind of disruptive impact it would have on their foreign policy in the way they they interpret or they visualize the world around themselves. So from that standpoint, I think the Chinese know exactly what a closer ties between India and US mean better than anybody else. So their anger, they're seeing a conspiracy to somehow destabilize whatever is happening, I think is quite well placed. But having said that, India has to decide for itself what it really wants to do, because US is not a neighbor of China.
Yes.
India is a neighbor of China. And you do not fight with neighbors endlessly, because this will be very, very destructive. So after the 3-day trip has gone away, which I think is a certain way a bit disruptive from the point of view of Indian foreign policy engagements, because we have to carry on with the way we have been doing, primarily because we are geographically located in a certain manner. We have our concerns, we have our own interests, and we have to see what works for us. We cannot be fighting with Russia. We cannot allow a visitor to come to our soil and say nasty things about an ally with whom we have a friendship treaty. We cannot, have a very aggressively adversarial position with the Chinese, with whom we have a trade of about $70 billion. And we also have to figure out how we deal with Pakistan, because Pakistan is a neighbor which kind of defines India's foreign policy in a certain way, and we haven't been able to put together a policy which can somehow countenance China, Pakistan in a certain manner. So what has really happened, if you see, US has come trying to be closer, but at the same time you have the Pakistani General Rahil Sharif crossing over to the Himalaya, beyond the Himalayas to the Chinese, and having his charcha with the Chinese counterpart.
Yes.
And you see the kind of optics that are coming out from the Chinese as well as Pakistanis, that look here, if you are realigning, we also are rebalancing our own stuff. So Pakistan has a new defense treaty with the Russians, for example, which was unthinkable.
In talking about Pakistan, we have a report on Pakistan as well. Now, Pakistan has come out strongly against the United States of America. In fact, for talking about President Obama's nuclear policy and overtures towards India during his 3-day visit. Pakistan hit out at various aspects of progress made in Indo-US ties during his visit. Here's a detailed report.
The landmark visit included moves to operationalize the Indo-US nuclear deal and Obama expressing support for a permanent seat for India at the UN Security Council. A clearly peeved Pakistan Prime Minister's advisor on national security and foreign affairs, Sartaj Aziz, said, and I quote, "Operationalization of the Indo-US nuclear deal for political and economic expediencies would have a detrimental impact on deterrent stability in South Asia." On exemption for India from NSG rules, he said this would further compound the already fragile strategic stability environment in South Asia and would further undermine the credibility of the NSG and weaken the non-proliferation regime. Aziz also hit out at Obama's support for India's permanent membership of the UN Security Council. Proposals to add new centers of privilege in the Security Council run counter to these collective objectives of Security Council reforms, he said. Aziz said Pakistan rejects any insinuation or aspersion over its commitment to fight terrorism, calling Pakistan terrorism's biggest victim. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Sanjay, coming back to you now, it's not just China, it's the Pakistanis as well who seem to be miffed at this point in time. But, is it something that we are used to? Because every time there is a successful visit from a visiting dignitary to India, we've seen the Chinese and the Pakistanis say something or the other about it, criticizing it. So, is there something that we can read into this, or would you just dismiss this as regular and routine?
No, Pakistan has a problem, primarily because they are also, as I said about China, equally uncomfortable with growing ties between India and the United States of America. They thought that they had a monopoly over the ties with the West. They were created primarily, if you go back into the history as to what partition really meant, they were actually created to help out to look after Western interests. And when they find that United States are dehyphenating India and Pakistan very consciously, and increasingly, if you look at many of the serials which are going on various channels in the US, Pakistan has been demonized as a center of terrorism.
Yes.
So there is very conscious departure which the Pakistanis are experiencing from when it comes to the West and how it was countenanced. So they are very uncomfortable, and they know that once this nuclear deal also gets operationalized, the ties between India and US will go substantially. And there would be a certain kind of setback that they would be suffering. The economy, their society is in a very bad shape. And at the time when the partition took place, they thought they were going into a promised land. So that hasn't really happened. And they think their fortunes will really plummet in the coming days if India and US get closer and India becomes the country that the West is seeking. So I'm sure it's not something that they really look forward to. There would be a huge amount of anger also in the populace, who would think that all their foreign policy, wooing the US, actually being the state which is actually taking on the fight against Afghan militants and whatever violence which is taking place in that area at the behest of the West, is not really paying off. So for Pakistan, in whichever way you look at it, it's a big loss.
Indeed. And as far as India-US ties are concerned, do you think this is the foundation really has been laid with Obama's visit to India? The 3-day visit has really laid the foundation for better things to come.
I think, as you would allow me to use it, when the deal was signed in 2008, which has been described by Prime Minister Modi as a cornerstone of the relationship between India and the US in the coming days. So the train was kind of standing at the outer and was not coming to the platform.
Yes.
So now it's come to the platform, and I think a lot of things would happen. Although work is still in progress, issues of investment, making tax regime more predictable. There are multiple things that need to be sorted out. But I think from now henceforth, I think things will start moving more rapidly.
All right, we'll have to leave to that. Thank you so much, Sanjay Kapoor, for joining us on the program this morning and putting things into perspective for us. Well, on that note, we'll slip into a short break here, but still to come. Indian stock markets close at new highs on potential India-US ties ahead. That and much more after this short break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira.
Barack Obama has been elected on the basis that I will no longer take America into wars, and in fact quite the opposite, I will pull America out of wars.
According to the Indian government, fishermen are not at fault.
The US intervention in Iraq set the stage for exacerbation of these conflicts, and then the intervention in Syria.
Watch World Panorama at these times on Rajya Sabha television.
A new government in New Delhi. New faces.
People are not investing because they are scared of your tax administration.
New thinking.
The auction process is a fair and good process.
You cannot have a one-size-fits-all reform policy.
For insights and perspective.
Judiciary should be more concerned about corruption within itself.
The Modi government slogan of "Achhe din aane wale hain." Soon the people's slogan will be "Hamare purane din lauta do."
The biggest show on economic policy. Watch State of the Economy.
Welcome back, you're watching Rajya Sabha television. Let's take a look now at some news-making events lined up for the day today in our special section, The Day Ahead. BJP is likely to release its manifesto for the Delhi Assembly elections today. State Party Chief Satish Upadhyay has said that the one-point agenda of the manifesto would be good governance. However, the party's Chief Ministerial candidate Kiran Bedi has said women's safety has been and will be her top priority. The manifesto is being prepared by Union Minister and former Delhi BJP Chief Dr. Harshvardhan. Well, with less than 2 weeks left for the Delhi polls, campaigning has intensified in the national capital. Several bigwigs are entering the campaign fray. BJP veteran Sushma Swaraj will hit the campaign trail in Delhi today, seeking votes for party candidates. Party's Chief Ministerial candidate Kiran Bedi will meet people in her constituency Krishnanagar. AAP convener Arvind Kejriwal will hold at least 4 public meetings in different constituencies. The national capital goes to polls on February 7th. The Allahabad High Court is likely to give its judgment today on the PIL challenging the death sentence of Surendra Kohli. Kohli is the prime accused in the Ditari serial killing case. Hearing on the petition concluded on Tuesday. Kohli was awarded the death sentence by a special CBI court in Ghaziabad in February 2009. Moving on now, an army colonel and a policeman were killed in an encounter with Hizbul Mujahideen terrorists in the Tral area of Jammu and Kashmir yesterday. The 2 terrorists were also shot dead. Martyred Colonel M.M. Rai was among Gallantry Medal winners just 2 days back. He was conferred the Yudh Seva Medal for outstanding contribution in conducting operations, including a gun battle with militants in South Kashmir last year. Reports say that as the colonel was working out the details of an ambush operation with locals, 2 terrorists rushed out firing blindly. Colonel Rai was hit in the temple and fatally wounded, and the SOG personnel was killed. The radio operator who shot down the 2 terrorists was injured.
That is a war which cannot be fought by merely making statements. Something more than that will need to be done. But till that happens, or whether it happens or not, we have to continue to stand firm on our ground and ensure that the designs of Pakistan, its international terrorist supporters are filed in Jammu and Kashmir, and we defeat them finally and firmly.
Moving on to some news from the stock markets now. The Indian stock markets will open at record highs today. The BSE, Sensex and NSE Nifty continued their record-breaking streak for the 5th consecutive session on Tuesday. The Nifty hit a record high at 8,900 level for the first time. The 50-share Nifty index was up 76 points to end at 8,911. The Sensex was up 266 points at 29,545. Markets were buoyed by optimism over upcoming budget and quarterly earnings amidst positive domestic factors and mixed global cues. Experts say capital goods stocks rose after US President Barack Obama and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi unveiled a deal aimed at unlocking billions of dollars in nuclear trade and deepening defense ties.
Whatever has come out of this visit, I think it's a big positive because we have signed nuclear treaty. They have committed investments in the smart cities and so on. So sentiment has improved a lot. So I personally feel that politically and economically this visit is a big positive as far as our country is concerned.
Here's a look now at the global stock markets. The US stocks fell sharply on Tuesday due to disappointing earnings and an unexpected decline in durable goods orders. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down by 291.49 or 1.65% to close the day at 17,387. Standard & Poor's 500 index lost 27.54 points or 0.134% to end the business at 2,029. Nasdaq Composite slipped by 90.29 points or 1.89% to finish at 4,681. Gold prices fell by 100 rupees or 0.25% to close at 28,300 per 10 grams on Tuesday amid weak trend overseas and slowdown in buying by jewelers at prevailing levels. Meanwhile, silver also remained under pressure and fell by 635 rupees or 0.45% to 39,400 per kilogram on lack of buying support from industrial users and coin makers. Asian stocks fell on Tuesday as Japanese shares slid on a stronger yen and US earnings and durable goods orders disappointed investors. Japan's Nikkei was down by 43.17 points or 0.24% to close at 17,725. And while Hong Kong's Hang Seng lost 102.62 points or 0.41% to end the trading at 24,807. Well, it's time for another short break on the program right now, but much more lined up on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
इस अंक में राज्यसभा की टीम आ पहुंची है भारत-पाकिस्तान सरहद पर।
रात को फायरिंग शुरू कर देता है जिसकी वजह से सिविलियन गांव को भी टारगेट करता है और हमारी बीओपी को भी टारगेट करता है, फिर मजबूरन हमको रिटेलिएट करना पड़ता है।
अगर लड़ाई करनी हो तो सीधे तरीके से लड़ाई करें।
बॉर्डर पे कोई नहीं रहना चाहता है।
पिछले 6 महीने में 2 बार हमारे पास हैवी शेलिंग हुई है।
क्या है भारतीय विदेश नीति की सबसे बड़ी चुनौती? देखिए हमारी स्पेशल रिपोर्ट सरहद के शिकार में, बुधवार रात 10:30 बजे सिर्फ राज्यसभा टीवी पर।
Back, you're watching Rajya Sabha television. Well, 5 foreigners are among 9 people killed in a series of militant attacks that rocked Libya's capital city Tripoli on Tuesday. 2 heavily armed gunmen stormed a luxury hotel in Tripoli and gunned down at least 3 people staying in the hotel. Militants also blew up a car bomb outside the hotel, killing 5 more people and injuring more than a dozen. The dead include 5 foreigners who were staying at the hotel. It was a narrow escape for Tripoli's Prime Minister and an American delegation. They were rescued just in time by the security forces. A militant group associated with the Islamic State insurgents in Iraq and Syria has claimed responsibility for the attack as revenge for the death of suspected Libyan Al-Qaeda operative in the United States.
فاتوا زوزن فاتوا ملاغمين شاطين واحد ضرب هنا واحد ضرب كلهم جت لكن واحدة فجر جت في هنا والثانية الله أكبر صار لنا ومشت بمور.
Some more international news now. A blizzard swept across the northeastern United States on Tuesday, closing schools and businesses. The storm was reported as weaker than expected, with the U.S. National Weather Service admitting that its forecasts were off the mark. Thousands of flights were cancelled ahead of the snowstorm that left residents in the hardest hit parts of Massachusetts and Connecticut digging out as much as 2 feet of snow. On parts of New York's Long Island, between 20 and 30 inches of snow fell, burying roads and sidewalks. Snow plows and snow blowers were used to help clear the roads, and shovels were used to help clear out driveways and stuck vehicles. Sanitation workers used salt spreaders to help keep the highways clear of ice. Well, let's take a look now at some other news and updates from around the world in our World Wrap. Yes, President Barack Obama met Saudi Arabia's new monarch, King Salman, on Tuesday. The U.S. delegation, including former Secretaries of State James Baker and Condoleezza Rice, and Saudi leaders held an hour-long meeting in which they discussed a range of issues, including the campaign against the Islamic State. Saudi Arabia is a key ally in the region. 5 men were arrested in southern France on Tuesday on suspicion of belonging to a jihadist cell which was recruiting young French people. Now, speaking at a news conference in Paris, French Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve has said that a new blow has been dealt to terrorism with the arrests in the Hérault region. Police units carried out an early morning raid in the small town of Lunel, overseen by the anti-terror branch of the Paris prosecutor's office. The European Union is considering more sanctions against Russia in the light of the worsening security and humanitarian situation in the eastern Ukraine region. European leaders indicated that in view of the deteriorating situation, the body has asked the upcoming Foreign Affairs Council to assess the situation and to consider appropriate action. Moving on to some news from the world of sports now. India's Sania Mirza and Leander plays their separate mixed doubles quarterfinals matches at the Australian Open today. Some other big names are lined up for the day 2 after Rafael Nadal was shocked and Maria Sharapova and Andy Murray advanced on Tuesday. Here's more.
Sania Mirza and Leander Paes carved out contrasting wins with different partners to reach the mixed doubles quarterfinals at the Australian Open tennis tournament and will play for semi-final places on Wednesday. Top seed Sania and her Brazilian partner Bruno Soares edged past Abigail Spears and Santiago Gonzalez 7-5, 6-7, 10-8 in the third round and will play against the Australian pair of Cassie Delacca and John Peers. The Indo-Swiss pair of Paes and Martina Hingis outplayed the Spanish combine of Anabel Medina Gregez and Pablo Arujal 6-3, 6-1 to reach the quarterfinals. They will play against the Czech-Austrian pair of Andrei Halvakova and Alexander Peer later in the day. In the other matches, Venus Williams plays Madison Keys in the quarterfinals match. Williams leads their head-to-head 1-0, but both women are playing a new brand of tennis this week in Melbourne. In another quarter-final encounter, Serena Williams takes on Dominika Cibulkova. Serena will play following her big sister and hopes to follow Venus directly into the semi-finals should they both win. In the third quarter-final, Stan Wawrinka takes on Kei Nishikori. Wawrinka and Nishikori are expected to go toe-to-toe in this match, which is a revival of their US Open quarter-final that the Japanese megastar won in 5 sets late into the New York night. And men's top seed Djokovic, winner at this tournament 4 times, meets big serving Canadian's Raonic in the evening session singles bout. The business end of the Australian Open 2015 promises to have closely fought wars from veterans as well as young guns, both dreaming of lifting the titles. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Finally, a special collection brought an element of drama to the ongoing Paris Fashion Week on Tuesday. The theme of this show was space. I'm going to leave you with these visuals. Have a nice day.